What is this?
Do we tweet the YouTube page or the Google Plus page? Probably YouTube.
Yeah, that's what I did last time.
If you want to go rally people,
Yeah.
we'll kick things off.
All right. I gave everyone a 2-minute warning.
Okay. Boom. Okay.
You good?
Yep. It's tweeted. It's live.
All right.
So we are officially on the internet. Hello, internet. So we're going to go through our stuff. Yeah, totally fine. Don't worry about time. Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to kick things off. Welcome. Thank you, man. You're in the right spot. You're looking for a different framework in the wrong spot. And how you ended up here. Wi-Fi password. Everybody can get on the Wi-Fi. Honorary member did a lot in the room. A couple announcemements. We've got a new design group, STG. You guys are wondering why is this pizza and beer so good? They can answer that question for you. They've helped us also allow more people and better food. So Jeff can give a little explanation of kind of what they're about. And they've been a great sponsor, really cooperative with us. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. My name is Jeff Urban. This is Chris Schmidt. We're with SG. We have some of our consultants here as well. We are a local IT consulting firm. We're a full-time salary benefit employees focusing on custom enterprise web development. So both in open source and Microsoft space. And we met with Joel and John probably about a month ago and just talked in this meetup. And so we were really excited about that. So we signed up and we're going to sponsor the beer and pizza for the year, and look forward to just helping you guys out and doing whatever we can. So thank you so much for having us.
Great. And also, Virtual, sponsor for the space where we're at right now. We are also hiring a full stack developer for Rails backend, Angular front end. If you're interested in that, talk to me or John. Seth is also here. And that being said, is there anybody who is hiring, looking to hire?
Yep. My name is Dan Ditto. I'm a lead developer at Euphoria Studios. We're PHP AngularJS. So kind of the back, in the front is more Angular. We're looking for kind of a well-rounded developer on the front end, CSS3, animations, the HTML5 as well. Somebody who's not going to try to put the elements in the wrong order. And somebody who's advanced enough to know a lot of the front end JavaScript and willing to get guys off the ground and get them going. I've gotten a couple of developers in the area started. So
that's looking for a job. Talk to him. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead. Right there.
Tom again, work for Intertech. We have two projects we're hiring for. One as a .NET that is active development with Angular. The other one I know less about is a job backend where they describe Angular plus.
So it's in Rochester for Mayo, but it's work from home 3 to 4 days a week. And they're looking for some Angular experience. It's full stack JavaScript, so it's lead stack with Happy.js instead of Express. I saw some more hands back there. Go ahead.
I don't know if we're having a live touch. We're looking for
All right, you need it down tonight. You're in the right place.
Yeah, I'm looking for work, I guess.
Go ahead, Dale.
Part-time though, so Angular, Java, Node, it's kind of my areas of interest. So it's actively preparing, I guess.
We've been keeping track of your site. How's that been going? We've been seeing improvements on it.
It's going okay. It's been a learning from the technology perspective. It's been pretty easy.
Yeah.
From the sales and marketing perspective, it's no challenge.
Challenge.
We can use it as an example of how fast you can really get things kicking off the ground and how impressive that's been. So,
Yeah.
what was the name of the site?
RE Broker List. Short
Short
for
broker
real estate.
list.
Yeah.
Anybody has any real estate agents looking for a broker, help you out. That being said, always looking for presenters. If you're interested in presenting, get in touch with me. Let's look that
I'm
up.
looking for presenters from March, April. They have some time on it, so if you guys want to have a cool project you're working on or on a platform to talk, get talking experience, talk to either Bill or I.
Yeah, definitely. Even if you have something that's kind of half-baked that you're looking to do further down the future, we're interested in scheduling these out further ahead so we can work with you if you need more than a month heads up to do that. So that being said, does anybody have any lightning talks they want to give? Anything cool that they're working on they want to show up on the screen? Okay.
All right, we'll get to the main presentation.
Yes, tonight we'll be listening to Chris Thielen talk about what Thielen, sound right? Chris Thielen talk about his project UI Router Extras. Really cool project. I took a look at GitHub. It's very cool. I'm interested to hear about it. So without further ado,
Hello, everybody. Take your seat. Thank you for having me here. Appreciate it. I appreciate you guys listening to me blabber. This is going to be my first talk that I've ever given, so pardon me if I'm nervous and if I blabber on, meander, drone on. Just tell me to get out of it. First of all, a little bit about me. This will be important as to why I came up with the UI Router Extras project. My career, I've been coding since age 10, professionally since '99, about 15 years. I'm a full stack developer, primarily been doing Java-based development, front end, back end, front end, meaning JSP, and that kind of stuff. Been doing Angular since 2014, so a very long time. Currently, I'm working on at a company that does health records and insurance claims processing. So that's really exciting. I am the author of UI Router Extras, of course, and I'm one half of the UI Router core team. I hate about new slides. To give you some perspective on why I built UI Router Extras, I'm going to talk about where I came from. So the current company that I'm working for, our product has a massive code base. This is the result of 15 years of duct tape development, where we duct tape something on top of the other thing, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. Our JSP front end is 550,000 lines of code, 500,000 lines of JSP. Our Java code is 1.9 million lines of code. The system is extremely modular. It has many overlapping interactions. We have lots of different components that talk to the core system in many different ways. The users themselves interact with the system in many different ways. So we're coming from a type 1 architecture. Type 1 meaning JSP, ASP, PHP, so all of your business logic, all of your database logic, everything is shoved into the JSP. The JSP knows where to send the user when they click submit. It's all very decentralized. Everything knows about everything else. Each time there's an interaction, there's a full page load. Current data submitted, a new page is built from scratch. So I'm sure we're all familiar with that development model. So some time ago, the company realized that we had the need for more interactivity for the end users that are using our product. There's various interactions in order to reach our data. So our data is obviously primarily health records. This data, we can view it in many different ways. So we can view it as tabular data, as drill down data that's specific to a particular use case, et cetera, medications, et cetera. Different ways, view it from many different ways. Lots of ways to slice and dice. And all of the different views, they must be concurrent with the other views. So the reason for this is the user, in order to perform their daily tasks, they have to be able to switch back and forth between these different views. So they're not only looking at different data, they're also looking at the same data that's sliced and diced and viewed in different ways. So in the current app, our main interactions are three things. We have the current user task, which is data that's relevant to me as the user of the system. We have patient chart, and that's data that's patient-centric, that's relevant to the person that we're actually doing health record stuff for. So we drill down into a patient, we can look at their medications, their allergies, their whatever, their orders and immunizations. And finally, we have the current user's working modules. And these are things that are not necessarily put in front of them, like in the current user tab, that would be like an inbox or a word list metaphor. Cats are put in front of them. then the user is driving their current task that they're working on. So it's based on their job, their role, whatever, and it's going to be different for every single user. And there's about 15. There's 15 different major modules that are based on role. So the first attempt that we did was iframes. Iframes everywhere. Everything has to know about everything. So in order to get this simultaneous interaction in a type 1 application, little type 1 applications inside of iframes. And then we had a bunch of JavaScript code that would swap iframes out and show the current iframe, show the current module. It was very painful. Our second attempt was custom backbone front end that we lovingly call DMVC. It was our first pseudo single page application, and I say it was single page because only the outer component was a JavaScript backbone app, and each inner component was actually iframe. So we still have this concept of little mini apps that are stuck in iframes. Now they're controlled by an outer single page application that you never get away from. So we're making some progress. Each individual piece has been replaced with backbone plus Marionette and/or is still JSP. Still don't have any routing. So everything has to interact with everything. Some examples of that are like if you have an iframe that has some data in it and you're modifying that data, that page has to know if something else is trying to replace the iframe. So the page has to be query paid to swap this out with some other data, and it'll say yes or no, etc. So we kind of have this. We kind of have these three things all interacting with each other. Patient chart, the current user's stuff, and the current user's module. In reality, it's a little bit more like this, where we have this module adjudication that needs to know about reporting and scheduling, and each module has to really talk to components within itself, and this module has to talk to that module, and that one has to talk to that one, and
now it looks familiar.
yeah.
Oh, even better.
I think I put too many animations on.
Oh,
No, that's good.
real world.
I don't know what
Where's that one?
Where's it gone? How do I get to the next slide? There we go. What? No. So January 2014, I had had enough, and started looking for other things. Now, what we actually came to with the whole outer quasi single page application with the inner iframe things, that was much better than we had before. But I wasn't satisfied. So January 2014 was my first exposure to Angular, my first exposure to a full single page application, my first exposure to client-side routing. I skipped ng router, went right to UI router based on advice that I read on the internet. And prototyped a small module in Angular that then got iframe and stuff in our app. So I came across UI router, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. And started thinking about your application in terms of states, and you don't have to think about its URL. So when I want to go from one thing to another, I don't have to actually construct a URL to send myself to that other thing. I can just say, oh, go to the adjudication state, and the router takes care of managing the URL and loading all that stuff up. We have things like state parameters, which are part of the URL optionally, and allow us to specify IDs and stuff in order to load resources, let's say, from our data store. So we could have a URL that says patient/123. We'll go to the 123 patient and provide that patient to the patient state. We can think in terms of substates, where a state can have nested states inside of it. So inside of the patient state, we might have a patient.medication state, and that's nested inside of the patient state. So they're really an extension of the patient state. Automatic URL mapping, of course, which is really great. We can have multiple named views with UI router, which allows us to lay out different sections of the screen state in our template, and this is the code that manages that template. So each little section can be its own sub-view. This would be really great for things like a dashboard where you might have today's work list over here, and then you might have upcoming events, and then you might have this. Each one of those things are their own little component. They're laid out as a named view within your dashboard state. So it's very, very flexible. UI Router allows for pluggable subtrees, which enables us to create code in a modular fashion. So I can create a adjudication module, and I can say your parent module is the nav module. I don't have to know anything about the nav module. I can just point to it and say, you live underneath that thing. That's really cool. Transition by state or by URL. UI Router takes care of mapping the URL to the state and the state to the URL. So if a user types into their web browser some URL or bookmarks it and comes back to it later, it will parse that URL, figure out what the state parameters are, figure out what state that maps to, and hooks up the machine and makes it go there and does all the things that have to be done in order to get to where you want to be. UI Router has resolves. Resolves are fantastic. Resolves are injectable things. You can inject into your JavaScript code, into your controllers, into your enter and exit callbacks, and they're inherited by substates. So if I have a patient parent state and I have a patient.medications substate, my patient.medications substate automatically gets all the patient resolvables, and they can be injected into that child state. Resolves are fancy because they are promise-based, and the to the state will not actually occur until the promise for that resolve has been resolved. So that's really slick, and you can do a lot of cool things with that. Finally, we have another thing I thought of is the enter and exit hooks, which are kind of nice. And those are just hooks for as you transition from a parent to a child state, or a parent to a child state, or a totally unrelated state all the way up and all the way down. Events are fired on that transition at each one of those little pieces along that tree. So as you exit an unrelated state, you go up to the root, essentially, and then you come back down. We'll say exit, 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 enter, enter, enter. And you get callbacks for that. And that's all based on, of course, the parent-child substate relationship. So UI Router is really cool. But there's definitely something missing, something that I needed in order for that application that we saw with the arrows, in order to get that working. I needed a little bit more. Thinking ahead, what I needed was simultaneously active modules. Now, UI Router has a single state that is active at any given time. What I wanted was to have one state machine in each tab. So when the user looks at their state machine to be active and to be consistent, when they move over to their patient-centric tab and do stuff in the patient-centric tab and then click back, I wanted that to be consistent. I didn't want the DOM to move around. I didn't want to rebuild anything. If they had started typing an email, I wanted that email to be there when it came back. Okay? So I wanted a way to maintain these different modules without rebuilding my own router. Another thing that I knew was missing was I needed to have the ability to lazy load a module and have it be injected into the UI Router's state tree. And for me, that was very important because the size of the application, the number of modules that we had, I didn't want to build a 35 megabyte JavaScript file that gets sent to the browser before they can do anything. So I wanted to lazy load stuff. I also wanted separation of module concerns and the ability for clean module-to-module interactions. And actually, UI Router does a pretty good job of that on its own. So let's manage this. How can I manage this massive JavaScript app that if we actually pulled it over, that our 2.3 million lines of Java code would become? So I forked UI Router, and I hacked it up and I made this parallel state activation thing. I opened an issue called issue 894 in UI Router. Didn't meet the long-term project's goals, so UI Router Extra Sticky States was born June 2014. Now that I think about it, that's only 6 months ago, 7 months ago. It's crazy. UI Router Extras has a bunch of different modules inside of it that you can include in your app that each provide different functionality. The number one, most simple one that I came up with was called Deep State Redirect, and Deep State Redirect is a tab helper that I wanted for my module. So when somebody clicks on a tab, it activates the adjudication state. But when they go to the adjudication state, I want to actually push them all the way down to the state they were in the last time that they were in that tab. So I wanted that tab to remember its deepest state, and if you tried to go to that tab, instead I wanted to go down to that deepest state. Second one is sticky states. That's the simultaneously activating multiple states in the app at the same time, had to maintain their DOM, all, everything. Third one is future states, and that's lazy loading the UI router states and getting them into the state provider. A couple other things in here, previous states, it's a little sketchy, I don't know. It allows you to return back to where you came from. So like if you pop open a modal, you can create a memo of where you came from, and then when you close the modal, you say go back to where I came from. But previous states is really just a trivial implementation, so I kind of think through it a little bit. Transition promise event. Now, this thing is really cool though. UI Router 1.0, when it comes out, is going to have this new transition system, and it's going to be really cool. This is a preview of the UI Router 1.0 stuff, and it's in the UI Router Experts project. And State Viz is just kind of this thing that I built for my demo sites that shows you the UI Router trees using the D3 library. And finally, core. The core module just exposes the internal state object using a $$ state decorator on top of your UI Router states. Normally, you give UI Router a state that you define, and that's all that you can see on that. Internally, UI Router puts a bunch of cool stuff on there. You can't get access to it. This thing exposes all that cool stuff. So let's look at a UI Router state tree. This is from my demo site. And what we have here is we have the root node here that you start from. There's actually nothing there. That's empty. Then I define 3 top-level states. One called top that is just a container. One called a side 2 that just also says aside. And then within this top state, we have a customer state, we have an inventory state, we have a people state. Within each one of those, we have more substates. We have a list state, we have a detail state for the customer, we have another list state for something underneath the customer, like this is the customer's list of orders. And then over here, we have a very specific order for that customer. Same over here, we have a store list and a store detail, a product list, and a manager list, a manager detail, an employee list, lives under the manager, and an employee detail. So deep state redirect, this first thing we were talking about, where it pushes you down there, it's just a marker on the state definition. So when you're registering your states with UI Router, you just add a little marker on there that says deep state redirect is true. Incidentally, I should ask, how many people here have exposure to UI Router? Can you raise your hands? Okay, that's pretty good. So most of you probably know what I'm talking about. Hopefully I didn't lose the rest of you to that. So deep state redirect states are going to remember the most recent substate and their parameters that has been activated. If we go back to here, that means this is marked as deep state redirect, the customer state. Once you go into the customer state, anywhere in here, those parameters in that state are going to be stored essentially by this state. The next time you might go over here, you might click through there, then you'll come back here, it's going to push you back down to where you were. So subsequent transitions to the DSR state will instead redirect to the deep substate. And here's the declaration for it. Over here, we've got a state top.people, that's right here, top.people, and we mark it with deep state redirect. That's all you got to do. So both top and customer, you can see here, are marked as deep state redirect. They remember their last active substate in parentheses. So if I click, this is my deep state redirect, and I click over here, and I click to customer, it's going to push me down there. In the same way, if I'm at a side, if I switch up here, and I click top, it's going to push me down to here. It also remembers the parameters, which is quite important. Oh, this is what I was just saying. It goes over there, and it goes back. Fantastic. All right, let's have a look. Oh, that is bizarre. I didn't know it would do that. It's now mirroring my screen for some reason. So let's have a look here. Here are those 3 tabs. Here's the personnel tab. Oh, by the way, this is state viz. This is one of my modules in Joyrider Extras. So this thing is going to update as we switch through these. So right now I'm in the people.manager list, and we're looking at personnel managers. So these are the 5 managers. We'll drill into there. Pushes me over here to the manager state. So this is a substate of people. This is also a substate of people. So these guys are, peer states. So it pushes me over there to the manager. Now I'm gonna view her team. I'm gonna click this link. There's her team. And again, it pushed me down here to this substate of manager. And for those people who aren't familiar with UI Router, what you're seeing here is the named views. So you can see that this here is top. Actually, this is top. And then within here, this whole thing here, that's top.people. And then right here, this is top.people.manager.employee list. Actually, this one is top.manager right now. If that makes sense. Because we got the manager. So you can see how it's it's nesting those things inside of there. I think I said those are named views. I didn't mean that I meant nested states. Those are nested states. Okay, so here we are, way down here. Let's go over here. Customers. Send me a customer. Let's drill into a customer, Ryan Lewis. All right, now we're going to go back to personnel. Shot me way down here, and it loaded Samantha's employee list. So it remembers. Now if I drill into Sherry Burks as an employee, go back over here and come back, Sherry Burks is now activated. And you notice when I clicked over here, of course, it sent me back to where I was. So deep state redirect, it pushes you down to where you were. Very useful for jobs. How do I get this guy back? Oh, wow, it just works. That's crazy. All right, sticky states. So now this is really the primary reason I built this whole UI Router Extra thing. Sticky states is also, just like state redirect, it's also just a marker. You just stick it on your state and it becomes a sticky state. It's not quite true. It's mostly true. Sticky states context is retained. This is very important if you're actually going to use this, is retained until the parent state to the sticky state is exited. So as long as that state's parent never gets exited, that sticky state will never get exited. It'll stick around. So let me show you what I mean by that. Oh, and also, when I say the sticky state context, this is what I mean. The context is the resolves. It's the entered/exited status. Well, it's going to be entered, of course. It's the DOM, and it's the controller. And because it's the DOM, things like partially filled in email address input boxes stick around. So remember when I say the parent to the sticky state, now look, these ones that used to be marked as DSR are now marked as sticky and DSR. So we're going to still use that DSR feature. When I say the parent to the sticky state, I mean this guy right here. So these 3 guys are sticky. As long as top doesn't get exited, these ones will not get exited. That makes sense. Let's look at how we specify that. That's right over here. We just add sticky is true onto our state definitions. That's all we got to do. Again, that's not quite true. It's nice to say it, though. Here's what you really got to do. You got to mark your sticky. You got to mark your state as being sticky right here. So in your state definition, you call it sticky, and then you also have to give it a named view. It's very important. You have to give it a named view so that there's a place in the DOM for that content to live. You don't give it a named view, your router's going to replace your UI view with something else. So each sticky state requires its own named UI view. This is what that looks like. You can see, like I said, views, you put a controller in a template there probably, and here's where you plug it into the DOM. You say div UI view is equal to email view. Now this guy is going to target that tag. Now, if you want, like I do, I'm doing tabs. If you want, you can hide this tag whenever your state is not actually technically active. If your state's inactive, you kind of want to hide that tab. Otherwise, it's literally in the DOM, guys. It's right there. You have a whole bunch of these states all active at the same time. This thing. So now we're going to look at that same demo, but this time we have sticky states enabled. You're going to see that the tabs, as compared to before, the tabs contents and scroll position and all that kind of stuff doesn't change. So I'm just going to drill in here to that same kind of place. This time it's Tracy Rosario's. And here is my person, my employee I'm editing. This person is great. Let's highlight some of this. I'm going to click over to some other tab. Let's go to Inventory tab. Now you can see this, the state viz is showing these guys as blue. That means that they're edited as opposed to they've been exited. Like these guys are totally exited. These guys are just inactive. So those still there. Now I'm down in here. Let's drill in further. Let's see. Let's go to the Exer citation store. And we'll check out the Xvalent product. That's my favorite. Now you can see we're down here. This guy is all three of these guys are inactive. When I click here, the SR is going to take over, push me down there, and the DOM is going to remain exactly the same way as it was when we left it. Except for I lied. Look, this guy is not selected anymore. I guess that's because of dot focus. I actually thought that was going to work. That didn't work. So you can see that we're still in the same context. My unsubmitted text is still there because it was in the DOM. I haven't done anything with it yet. It's just DOM. It's just the value of that text field. But you can see how these things here, they're not changing at all as I go back and forth. The reason for that is all that is really doing, as far as the DOM is concerned, is toggling the visibility on those two divs. So one div is hidden, the other is shown. If we were to open our inspector, we'd see both of those DOM trees in the DOM. One of them would have displayed as none. That's it. All right, so that's sticky states. By the way, how am I doing for time? 7:38?
Doing great.
Let's talk about future states. So future states are essentially unrealized state placeholders. I remember my long convoluted story about where I came from. We had these massive modules, and I didn't want to load those modules into my new JavaScript-based app. So I wanted to make sure that I could load those modules on the fly and shove them into the state provider. So future states are unrealized state placeholders. So essentially, if I have this massive adjudication module, I register a future state up there that just says adjudication, and it's at this URL and below there. So it's going to be a marker for a future state definition or an entire tree of states. So I could have this massive module that I'm just saying eventually it's going to be there. Right now it's just a placeholder. Someday when you try to go there, well then I'll load it and then I'll put it in there. So a future state remains dormant or unrealized until a transition triggers that future state to load. A transition could be either by URL. So let's say they try to go to /adjudication /product /blah blah blah 1 2 3 4 5. Well, my future state definition just says anything after adjudication, load this state tree, and then be done with it. Retry the transition after everything is loaded. So whether a URL matches the future state's URL, or if the state name partially matches the future state's state name. So if I try to navigate to adjudication.products, blah, 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 by state name, it'll also trigger that entire tree of states to load. When a future state or state tree loads, it's realized as a full UI router state and or state tree definition, and it's shoved into the UI router state provider. Basically, it registers it on the fly, the state provider. Now, that's only half of the story. The other half is you actually have to lazy load the JavaScript itself, which is it's a separate concern, essentially, from loading things into the state provider, the URL state provider. Lazy load, URL extras, future states is lazy load agnostic. You can use whatever lazy load provider you want. Actually, that's me kind of hunting because it's difficult. You could, if you wanted to, you could load some JavaScript using $HTTP and eval, and there you go. Your state's loaded. That's simplistic and it's very limited. There's a couple of utilities out there that allow you to do much better mechanisms for loading Angular stuff on the fly. One of those is Angular AMG and ng load, capable of loading an entire Angular module on the fly. The Angular module actually doesn't even have to know that it's being lazy loaded. You don't have to write any special code other than required JS define declaration on top of there. So that's kind of cool. There's another one called OC Lazy Load that I don't have any personal experience with, but I know it's very popular and I think it's better than Angular AMD. It's also capable of loading entire modules on the fly. So we need to get these, once we load these things, we need to shove them into the state provider. We need to let UI router know that they actually exist. There's a couple options. Number one, you can, when your future state is loaded, you can resolve that with the actual future state definition, and we'll load it for you from the state provider. Otherwise, if you have your own access to the state provider, which is normally hidden, you can just register it yourself, and I'll retry the transition when you tell me it's okay. This is runtime. You don't have access to providers. So you need to snag a copy of it. You need to use OC Lazy Load. You need to do whatever you need to do. And there's a lot of gotchas because you can't register a module after you've gotten to runtime. So there's a bunch of gotchas that I had to work through in order to get this stuff to work properly. So use these things. Use OC Lazy Load. Use Angular plus this ng load in order to write your code like it's just a regular module, but it gets the entire Angular module actually gets loaded at runtime. Uses required JS, both of them do. Let's take a look at this guy working. So if we were to, oh, geez, hello. Okay. All right, so if we were to go actually into the console, I'm going to do a, oh darn, maybe that's $60 states. I'm not going to do this right now because I'll probably mess it up. But if you're to say, query the state provider, it's going to be that there is nothing. But then up here are some links for a bunch of different modules. And when I click these guys, it actually just loaded this state called iframe. This is the simplest future state that you could possibly do. It literally creates a state definition on the fly that sets its template to an iframe. It looks like this. Here's my factory. And what I do is I grab my future state. This is the thing that you registered. And I create a real state. This is like the full UI router kind of state. I give it a name. I'm going to say the name is whatever you said the name was. And I give it a template. I say the template is an iframe. Awesome. And then I give it a URL so that it can be mapped up on the URL as /iframe. And then I return a promise. When this promise is resolved, which immediately, well then it's going to say, okay, your state's loaded. Now I'm going to navigate to iframe. So here again, we navigated to iframe after that thing ran. We got a couple of these. It's kind of fun to watch them pop up here. Iframe 2, there's another state. We got this one here, which is lazy load controller, which is a little bit more complex. It's not actually it's loading the controller on the fly. And we can look at that offline, I suppose. But this one, I think, is using require.js in order to load the controller. And then it resolves the state to the name of the controller and something. So here is, here's my false state. I say the controller is lazy controller. Lazy controller is actually a require.js dependency, so it sucks in that lazy controller and it registers the lazy controller, and then I say that's who I want to control my thing. Give it a name, give it a URL, give it a template URL. And then we've got this controller putting these variables on the scope so you can see that it's doing that properly. Then we have some slightly more interesting examples, which I will have you read the source code on your own time. But I click module 2 here. I actually just loaded a full series of states on the fly. This is using Angular AMD plus ngload. So that's just a whole module definition that just got sucked in. Registered a bunch of states on its own with the state begins to have module loads. It resolves its promise, and future states retries the transition. So it tries to go back to the module 2 state, which now exists. There you are. We're at module 2. It also would have worked if I had tried to go to module 2.state2.nested, because again, it will look for any future states that match any of the parent states that you try to access. So, let me see what I have under here for source code. I don't remember if there's anything interesting here. Well, here is the source code for the ngload state factory. It's actually fairly simple. It's a plugin for require.js called ngload, and registered that plugin. And then when you prefix your require.js name with an exclamation point, then, or whatever the plugin is in an exclamation point, it will actually use that plugin to do the require.js stuff. So this thing does a bunch of magic. It loads this, also requires these guys. And then this is how simple the callback is. So after ngload loaded my module, I just run this thing. I have to do this Angular AMD.process to get it sucked into the module system. And then once that's done, then my states are loaded. So you can see that here, and then we just resolve the promise once all this require.js stuff is done. So this stuff obviously happens synchronously. We return the ngload deferred.promise, which we declared up here. That happens synchronously. Require.js, that's all asynchronous. That happens later. Your call happens, but then the callback, that executes later. So this is where we actually resolve that deferred up there with the state. See if we can switch back. Yes?
Maybe you already explained this, but is there a reason why you're using iframes?
Because it was a very simple example.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the simplest possible future state. You could say, hey, look, I'm a future state, and my template is that HTML over there as an iframe. So it's ridiculous. Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so we got some other stuff in here. The core module, it exposes the internal stuff. This is how you use it. This is the standard UI router state service. State.getMyState gets you to my state from the state service. And off there, now it's been decorated with this $$ state function. $$ because it's super ridiculously internal. That gets you the internal state object that we as UI router developers, that's what we interact with. It has some stuff like a .path. Inside the .path actually has all the parent states. So if you did the .path on employees, or managers.manager.employees, it would tell you that your parent state is manager, and then your parent state to that is personnel or whatever. So it gives you this actual object-based path to the state that you just pulled from the state provider. Things like the URL matcher object, which is a service that lives on the internal state, has an API, allows you to do things like figure out if a URL matches a state. We use that internally, and all the other guts that you might want to muck with. It also has a bunch of stupid _JS copies. StateBiz, when you use StateBiz, you have d3.js. If you don't know D3, it's like this cool charting graphing library. You put StateBiz.css from the demo site in there if you want, and we'll style it. You just stick a StateBiz date on there. Please rewrite it for me. Transition promise is a proof. This is another module that I mentioned. It's a proof of concept for the UI router 1.0 transition management. Totally undocumented. Totally might work. I don't know. UI router issue 1257. If you want to figure out what the API for it is, you can inject it into onEnter, onExit, and controller callbacks. It contains a transition promise. So if you inject it into your controller, or if you inject it into your onEnter, you can say, don't do this stuff until the transition has actually completed, which is really cool. Has a bunch of information about the current transition. Way better than listening for these events. These events are actually probably going to go away in 1.0. With our current event system, we can't even detect when the transition's been canceled. It really sucks. So, some questions. How does sticky states work? How does future states work? How does DSR work? How does transition promise work? And how does StateBiz work? Well, there you go. Barely. Yeah, so, but seriously, if you want to know how it works, I would love to talk to you about it. That's my Twitter. That's my GitHub. That's my email address.
Do you really own that domain? That's awesome.
As often as I can. That's all I got.
Great job, dude.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Who has a question? Yeah.
Somewhere in the middle, you mentioned that you had vision show to a lot of tabs.
Yes.
That you have not rendered around. Is there any way that you can load up the app so that we have that?
Yeah, I'm gonna kill the broadcast after it's done. Just take
Yes.
it out there.
I could write it directly off of that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. There are some people who want to use this and show all of their concurrently active states, however. So definitely need to support both cases. One case is for like dashboards, like you might have a bunch of things that are their own state trees and you want to see them all at the same time. Primarily the use case I wrote for is what you're thinking for the tabs. I could probably actually create a directive that you would know it's a sticky state and there wouldn't be all this confusion. It's actually a lot of confusion from the users that are using this thing. So that's good feedback.
Did you say that defines everything that's been activated and then deactivated or made inactive? Does that affect performance on multiple devices?
Yes, it does. And the reason why, especially, it's memory intensive, because your entire DOM is still in memory. So, I mean, it's really no different than you putting a big chunk of DOM into your document and then putting display on that. So it definitely does affect the performance on mobile devices.
Not understanding correctly, but would it be better as OG if it was not?
It does, but if you do that, you'll also lose the DOM. It will rebuild it from scratch the next time you show it. So you'll lose any edits and that kind of stuff. Yeah. That's frequently on my issue track. Yeah.
Have you thought about using virtual sessions?
Yes, I have. So part of it was a design choice to keep the DOM in memory. Local or session storage would work fine, but in that case, you could achieve the same thing with sticky states by doing essentially the MGF.
Browser.
Yeah. Definitely. My approach has a theoretical approach, which I haven't taken, but I've thought about, would be to do that on a case-by-case basis.
Very good.
Anybody else?